you?
Hello, Fontani. Thank you so much for having me. Doing really good. Traveling in for a few days here in Los Angeles at the moment. It's a little bit rainy, so you know your instinctive responses when it's cold, you kind of just want to hide a little bit. You want to curl in bed. You don't really want to go outside. So it's actually quite nice just to be a little bit homebound, you know, just to sit still for a little while and get work done. So doing really good, actually. Wet but good.
Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah.
Yes, you do that, and then you can get back to battle.
Exactly.
So I want to learn some things about you. I've heard a lot of nice things from Anastasia. She's always talking with the greatest words about you, but I want to get to know you.
Of course.
Yeah, I would like to share a little bit, to share with me a little bit of your story. Who is Evette, and what was her journey up until now?
So my journey up until now, like if you ask me what is my life like right now, I would say it's fantastic. My life is everything that I wanted it to be, finally. So, you know, my business is doing well, I'm emotionally doing well, I have great friends, I have, you know, created what I want to create it. So I'm starting to see the efforts, the labor of my fruit beautifully starting to unfold. But my life hasn't always been great. So during my childhood, there was a lot of challenges that I went through. You know, I mean, I'm sure anyone listening today, or whether you're reading this or listening, you can relate to that, right? There is something sometimes that happens in our past that, you know, it deeply affects you emotionally, spiritually, and also your quality of life, right? So for me, there was a lot of, you know, childhood abuse. There was a lot of bullying at school. There was sexual abuse. So all these things that happened to me really, really changed who I am and was as a person back then. It deeply changed my personality, my characteristics, the way that I cope with life. So, and you know, when you are in a place of pain for such a long period of time, all that you start to see is pain, right? If you're depressed all the time, all that you're going to see is a depressed world, because you're not filtering in the joy and the happiness that's out there, because you're so focused on the negative and on the pain that is all that you see. It's almost like you become a frequency match for everything else around you and outside of you that's negative. And so that is what became my life cycle. I only saw depression, I only saw violence, I only saw pain, and I was only able to recognize and filter in, you know, abusers, because that's all that I knew. It's almost like when you haven't seen or experienced a different type or aspect to life, it's like abuse becomes a lifestyle. It becomes normal, because you don't have a healthier reference point to sit and take a step back and go, oh my God, you know, that is not okay. Instead, it is okay, because you don't have that higher frequency, you don't have that higher positive experiences to match that with. So as I grew up, you know, you just learn to cope and deal with the pain. But the thing with the physical body is that it has a threshold. It can only handle and take so much until it starts to kick back and you start to feel either emotional pain or physical pain, because your threshold is telling you, listen, we need to wake up, because what you're doing, the way that you're living your life, isn't working for me. I can't sustain you. This is the body talking now. You know, I can't sustain you and your purpose and the goals and everything that you're pushing so hard to achieve. I can't cope with the stress that you're putting me under. So I'm going to do something to get your attention. I'm going to say something in whatever way I can to get you to listen to me. And normally the only time when we really listen, when our attention is brought back to the present time, is when we are in a place of pain. I mean, I'm sure anyone here, you can relate that the moment, like when you hit your toe really hard, or you just had a breakup with someone and you're in so much pain, that pain pulls you into the present moment. You can't be anywhere else other than in that moment of pain, to be present with it, to recognize it, and then we try to avoid it. But pain is a call to action. Whether it's physical pain, whether it's spiritual pain, or whether it's psychological pain, that discomfort is there to tell you we need to make a change. Now, what kind of change? That is up to you. Some people make positive changes. They actually dig deep in to see where is the pain coming from and to resolve the psychological, the physical causes of it. And then we have other people that goes the other way, and they decide, okay, whether conscious or unconscious, most of the time it's unconscious, but they also try to deal with it, but they deal with it from an angle of, I'm going to create a coping mechanism. And so as I was saying, that we go into these addictive patterns where, we create coping mechanisms. It's almost like, I call them crutches in life, right? Because we lean on them. We can't really move forward without these coping mechanisms, because we need to divert the stress. The stress needs to go somewhere. Because what happens is, in the past, many, many thousands, hundreds of years ago, our bodies had natural healing cycles. We were able to complete trauma cycles on our own. But now these cycles have become stuck. We stopped allowing the body to complete these cycles because we found all these other coping mechanisms that is disrupting the body's natural ability to heal itself. So now we have all these cycles that's getting stuck, and the stress is getting more and more and more. So of course, the more that the stress becomes, the more we reach out to these coping mechanisms. Now, and that is exactly what happened to me as well. And I'm sure many of you that's here with us today, that you can relate to that, right? You can only handle certain emotions and stress to a certain point until you snap, right? And then we go into a meltdown, we can have a panic attack, or we look for coping mechanisms. So I had my own coping mechanisms. I was smoking 30 cigarettes a day. I was an alcoholic. I was self-medicating with medication. Back then I was, 20, 21 years old. And I was doing excessive exercising. I had bulimia. I had anorexia. Here's the most important part. I hated my body. I hated my physical body, because my body is the very thing, the very vessel that made me feel pain. And of course, we're going to try then to avoid the very thing that's causing you pain. But now we are avoiding the vessel, the very thing that holds the answers, right? That holds the answer for us to deal with the pain that we're in and to release that. So now look what we're doing. We try to run away from the physical body. We try to run and find all these different coping mechanisms in the background. But here's the answer. So we're moving away from the very thing that can actually help us to move forward, because it is the body's sole purpose to support you. It is the body's sole purpose to propel you forward in your life. It doesn't have another purpose. But when there's an ailment, when there's pain, when there's stress, that's the body's way of saying, listen, your lifestyle is not working. We need to figure out a different way to move forward. Now, of course, you might have done everything right in your life, but you still are in a place of pain. Now, that is when we have ancestral predispositions. Of course, there's certain things that happened in the past that we are going to feel the pain of that. We're going to feel the brunt of that, of course. But we don't have to be a victim to that. That's the good news. But I didn't realize that at the time, back then, 10, 12 years ago, before I started my healing journey. And so my journey started, because everyone always thinks that it started with the Metaphysical Anatomy, the book, right? No, the book is just a beautiful ripple effect and expression of my journey that started actually with me. I didn't plan, and if you told me 15 years ago that I would be a personal development teacher, I would be an author, I would be, hosting live events and doing all these things, and I would be doing energy work and healing work, I would have laughed at you. I wanted to become a lawyer. I wanted to become a crime scene investigator. I wanted to become a lawyer representing men and women that's been unfairly abused and, that went through unjustful situations. But that completely changed because I changed. And I realized that, because as I changed, we make decisions based on past experiences and trauma. So the more the past that shaped my decision making, my way of thinking, the more my dreams and goals spontaneously, positively started to change, right? Because now you make decisions from a place of clear and healthy judgment instead coming from a place of pain or trying to overcompensate. So, and just to backtrack a little bit there, so what happened was that just before I started my healing journey, of course, we all get to a point where we are pushed to our limit, where we're like, oh my God, I need to do something now. Because you can feel you're either going to collapse or something bad's going to happen. And for me, I was at that crossroad where it was live or suicide. It really, the path for me was that clear. It was black and white. There was no in between. And I woke up one morning before having to go to work, because I was working relentless hours as well, because of course I was trying to avoid how I was feeling. So I was filling up my life with all this artificial, things that was meaningless. It didn't mean anything. And I didn't even have time to have friends, let alone have a relationship with myself. And so I woke up, and I remember I was lying there in bed, and I'm thinking, lighting a cigarette, and I'm feeling this anxiety coming again. I'm like, God, I just want to go back to sleep again, because then I don't feel the anxiety. And I poured a glass of vodka, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and I called the office and I said, guys, I'm not coming in. Today is my day. I'm not coming in. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, there's people in the office where I was working that's happy. There's people in the street walking around that's really genuinely happy. You can feel that their happiness is authentic. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what are they doing that I'm not? What makes that person more special than me, that they can have that delightful experience and I cannot? And what I realized the difference between me and these people is that they actually are very conscious people. They're conscious of their pain. They are conscious of things and relationships and circumstances that doesn't work for them. And they take action to correct it. They're not victims of, negative or abusive circumstances. They're not passive in their life. They are proactive. And I realized, wow, this is the first step that's lacking in my life. I am not proactive. I became completely passive. I was sitting back, just allowing life to happen to me. But instead, it's not happening to me. Life is an experience. And I had to take my power back from this experience. And so I realized that taking my power back from this experience means that I'm going to have to make a decision. Because everything in life starts with a decision. An intention, decision, and then action. So my intention already started that morning, and that was something needs to change. I didn't know what. At that time, I didn't know what, but I knew something needed to change. And that's when I made the decision, I'm going to do something about it. I even didn't know what it was, but at least it was one more positive step forward from where I was a minute ago. And I went there on the computers. Back then in the days, we had like these big computers with these big clunky screens and these, keyboards that stands up like towers with the keys. And I was typing into Google, how to be happy. And that's when all these courses came, and like angels and crystals, and I'm sitting and then I'm like, oh my God, this is the answer? Oh my God. I was raised Christian. I'm not Christian, but I was raised Christian. There are a lot of brainwashing about, psychic is satanic, it's bad, it's negative, so many limitations. All my limitations were just triggered one after the other, and I sat there and I'm like, God, if this is what I have to do to find my happiness, then please forgive me, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to take this step. I need this. I'm like, because I was angry. I'm like, God, you're not doing anything to help me. Where are you during all this midst of pain? Where is it that, where do you stop and start? Where do I stop and start? Where does the responsibility start and end? And that's when I took my power back, because my power was just hanging outside of me, just for me, waiting for people to save me, waiting for people to fix my life. But that's not going to happen. Everyone's busy with their own lives. Everyone has their own pain and circumstances that they're struggling with, right? We all have our cross to bear, as they would say. And I realized, okay, I'm going to take this cross that I'm bearing, and I'm now going to take a step forward, and I'm going to change my life. So I did start to get into these courses. I started going through all these modalities, the more I started doing it, the more I realized, wow, I'm seeing changes. This is amazing. I'm feeling different. I'm feeling lighter. I'm feeling more at peace with my life. I can look at my past and I feel a sense of settledness. And I'm thinking, this is fantastic. This has to be shared. Because if I can feel these changes, then you should be able to feel these changes too. And that's when I started to play around with these different modalities, designing my own technique, because every modality has, I feel, they have their lifespan in your life. You know, it works to a certain point, and then you grow beyond that, because now your body and your mind and your spirit's ready for more, right? It's ready for the next level. So we graduate from certain modalities and we move on to the next modality. And so I couldn't find that next modality. And I'm thinking, there has to be more. More must be done, because I could feel that I wasn't 100% where I wanted to be. And that's when I started to play around with metaphysical anatomy technique, rapid growth. And so playing around again, and then pausing there, what I did was I went to go see another practitioner for, you know, I had stuff being triggered because I was experimenting on myself, which I always am. You know, I'm my own guinea pig. And I triggered myself, and I thought, oh my God, here we go again. Something of the past is not resolved. So I went to see someone, and my sexual abuse trauma triggered so badly that it felt like I was reliving it. And now the practitioner that I was working with was also sexually abused, and it triggered her sexual abuse trauma. And now we're both sitting there triggered, and she can't get me out of this state. And I'm like, oh my God, because this is one of the worst situations that you could be in. And so I said to her, listen, I'm done. I'm ending this session. And I went home and I called a friend, as we do at a crisis, right? And so I called a friend. Yeah. And I said to her, listen, you need to go through these steps exactly as I'm giving it to you. Do not defer from it, nothing. Follow it step by step. And so she took me through it. And then 10 minutes later, it's like nothing happened. My body completed the cycles so gently, and the trauma was gone. It was over. The memory was there, but the charge was completely gone, and it never came back. And that was the day when I realized, jackpot. Jackpot. What if this is my next level up? This technique that I've been playing with, right? Because ultimately, we teach what we need to learn ourselves. We practice what we need to learn ourselves. And there I was doing the very thing, practicing and teaching the very thing that I needed to learn and experience. So it's almost like there was a part of me that called in this woman that was going to trigger me so badly, so that I can see that the answer that I've been working on and creating is ready. It's right in front of me. And that's when I started to roll out the technique, and with a lot of success. And so the more people that came to seminars, you know, me just understanding and seeing, you know, intuitively looking into the body and seeing, wow, you know, someone from Hong Kong that has cancer has the exact same emotional trauma triggers as someone in America. My God, how's that possible? Different cultures, different religions, but collectively we shared the exact same emotional triggers. So, and I started compiling that information in my workbooks. And out of frustration, I wrote Metaphysical Anatomy, because people were asking me so many times, you know, what does this mean? What does that mean? So if I have this, what is the psychosomatic meanings behind that? So I started to write in a manual all these research notes that I've made, so that I can just say to people, here's a manual. Go for it. Go have a look, see what's in it, and then take it from there and follow your healing journey. And that's how Metaphysical Anatomy was born. And me being an author was also being born. I never intended for that to happen. It was not something that I found intriguing. It didn't get me excited when I thought about it. But when I finally wrote it, I felt this beautiful alignment in me come up, and I'm like, wow, I am exactly where I need to be. This is what I want to be doing. So that's Evette, and that is how my journey started.
Well, thank you for the sharing. It's a great journey to begin with. And I have to say about the book that it is a great book. I bought it before attending the level 1 seminar of Metaphysical Anatomy.
Yeah.
And it was really it gives you answers to many health issues.
Yeah.
Even if you are not practicing metaphysical anatomy, even if you are practicing another healing technique, I think it can give you many answers.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Yeah, it will work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I totally agree with you. I have my own experiences of trauma coming back and back again, and me trying to solve it, and then returning. And then trying to relieve it, and then it just got away. This is what happened just right before I met my soulmate.
Oh wow!
I just I had a trauma. One night I was sleeping, it came back, and I just said with my own intuition that okay, let's relive it, and let's say goodbye to it. And after about a week, my soulmate came back to my life, because I was knowing him for about 5 to 6 years.
Wow!
And it was really it was really great. So I think that the way of releasing trauma, it's something that can have results.
Absolutely.
And we all want results. But
And-
I have another.
But Fontainia, just before you move on, I just want to add this for you, and I think this is very important for the audience also to understand. As part of metaphysical anatomy technique, what I learned, and including in my own journey, is that you don't have to relive the trauma in order for it to heal. And that is what I designed, and why I love metaphysical anatomy so much, is because you can work on something. You don't need to know what the trauma is. You don't need to know what the memory is. You don't need to know what the belief is, because memories and belief systems and all these things are just expressions. They are symptoms of a much deeper problem. It's like imagining seeing a tree, right? So the roots of the tree is the trauma, and the branches are like the belief systems, and the twigs and the branch and leaves are, beliefs and memories. You can have thousands of these memories and belief systems connected to one singular trauma, but if you go and you pull out the root of that tree, you take everything out. You take the whole programming out of that. Because if you start working with, just a belief or just a value system or just a memory, you're snapping off twigs, and that's why issues keep coming back. And that is also why a lot of people in the past, there's a lot of modalities like 100 years ago where they actually re-traumatize people, because they believe that it would trigger all the belief systems, all the memories, so that they can heal it. But this is now what happens. This is very important. We all are familiar now with this concept called neuroplasticity. That's the New Age word for neurogenesis, which means new neural pathways growing, right? Now, a certain amount of stress and hormonal release is needed in order to promote neurogenesis, in order to grow new neural pathways. And we don't have to be re-traumatize ourselves in order for this chemical to be released, right? It can be very gentle, just such as feeling an emotion, because when you feel an emotion, that's something that you are 100% clear in that you can feel. Whereas a memory can be something that can be made up, because we feel something, we don't understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to talking therapies, you talk about your emotions, but they try to analyze where it's coming from. And now here's what happened. When you're in that state of disempowerment, we give our power away to the practitioner. So the practitioner can sit there and make suggestions saying, okay, but if you feel violation, there could have maybe been sexual abuse, you could have been raped. And so now what happens is that intellectually we sit here with a developed limbic system, emotional brain, that's where we feel our emotions, hippocampus, and we think, okay, wow, yeah, if I was raped, I would feel violated. Oh, wow, and then we start forming false memories. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who try to heal something that never happened. They spent their lifetime trying to heal something that never happened. That's the danger of trying to work with memories. That's the danger of trying to work with belief systems, because all these aspects intertwines back to each other, trying to form a memory. We don't always know what memories are real and what's not, because now we also have genetic predispositions from our ancestors. We can have their memories being triggered. So we feel a memory replaying in our mind that's not actually ours, but we try to relate to it because it's there, so something must have happened. I feel these emotions, and then we make a connection. And in that state of distress, when that's repeated enough, new neural pathway starts to grow. So neurogenesis is not just positive. We can also have, is what I would call, this is an Evette-ism, is negative neurogenesis. And that is exactly what happens when you reprogram yourself into thinking that something bad happened because I feel this emotion, and boom, there's a negative memory that never happened. Right? So
Wow.
I just wanted to explain something there about reliving trauma and why I'm so against it. You don't need to relive trauma. You don't need to remember what happened. You can still have a very successful and effective healing by just focusing on the core foundation of metaphysical anatomy, which is our instinctive responses, meaning our survival responses and emotional responses.
Yeah, maybe I stated differently, but it was great because you gave me so many more information to use. As reliving it, I meant that I was reliving it with my body. That was the interesting thing. I couldn't remember from when it became, but my body was having this feeling that I always had, and
Right.
I just completed it. And it's great because, and this is what I liked in metaphysical anatomy technique, that you're working with the body, and the mind can say its own things, but the body never lies. It's always gives you the truth, your truth, and that was what I loved in metaphysical anatomy.
Right. And I think what happened, so I did understand what you said, because I think what happened for you is that when you said that you relived it, your body actually completed the cycle finally. That's what I feel that happened for you. But it's just the moment when you said the word relive, it triggered the thought. I thought, wow, I really want to share this quickly with you, while I remember it. Yeah.
It was really, it was great information. Yeah. Thank you a lot. Well, I have another question.
Please.
Because I would like to know. I understand that you have so many knowledge in you about metaphysical anatomy and about anatomy. Where did this came from?
So this came from having worked with thousands of people, having taught almost 100 classes worldwide. So I'm an observer. I'm a trauma researcher and I'm an observer. I love observing people, not with the intention to judge, but with the intention to understand. Right? There's a difference. So what I realized in my work is that, it fascinated me that, all these students that I'm attracting and that's coming into my business and into my life, I'm like, wow, when you release trauma, it's exactly the same sequence that I'm observing in the body as it's releasing trauma than what it's for someone on the other side of the world. Completely different, culture, beliefs, upbringing, environmental triggers and changes. That's completely different. But biologically, we were shifting and healing exactly the same. And that's when I realized, wow, the body stores trauma consistently, exactly the same in the specific order and sequence for everyone collectively. And then I'm thinking, this is amazing, because that means that you can reverse and untangle and release that systematically as well. And it should be the same for everyone else then, right? And so I started to develop metaphysical anatomy technique more and more, realizing and seeing how it's shifting and releasing. I'm like, wow, the way we store it's the same, the way we release it is the same. So, and because when you look at the foundation of the biological body, we are all the same. Our biological makeup stores and releases trauma exactly the same. It is our emotional stress and genetic predispositions that expresses trauma differently. We have different thresholds that causes us to react and respond differently. But how it's biologically stored, not emotionally, biologically stored, meaning how the physical body reacts, is the same. And I'm like, it was just this explosion moment. I'm like, this is amazing. If I can figure out what the algorithm is for this, then we can have a consistent way of healing and shifting emotional trauma. We can have a consistent way of healing and shifting physical and emotional pain. And so what I noticed was that, for example, with pain, there's just 2 steps extra and a little bit different, not big, just a little bit. And when we work with pain, for example, then when we work with emotion in terms of storing it and also releasing it. And so I designed the technique around how our biological body stores trauma, because so many modalities teaches you we have to go up there and speak to this person to release this trauma. We have to go connect to this energy frequency outside of ourselves to heal this and bring this in, bring that in. I'm like, oh my God, you're abusing your body. You're abusing it. Why would you do that? Right? It's like everything is perfectly there, what you need. Utilize it. It's because we don't know how to listen to the body. We don't know how to work with it because we've been so busy playing outside of ourselves that we forgot how the real engine and motherboard actually works. And so that's where my passion came back, to work on the physical body.
It seems easier to get out of the body and to work from out. But yeah, I think it's easier once you get to know it. I think it's easier to work within the body.
Exactly, and you are right. It really is. But what if you can find something that is very gentle and effective and so easy that you literally just have to follow a structure and it works? I made it my mission to take away all your excuses, all the excuses that we have to not heal, and to see that, hey, healing can actually be fun. It can be playful. Yeah, because we associate healing with pain. So of course we're going to try and avoid healing work, right? Because it's painful, it's depressing, it's heavy. No, it doesn't have to be. You know, when you come to Metaphysical Anatomy Technique, the Rapid Growth live events, we play with the limbic system, we play with the reptilian mind in the brain, we work with the mirror neurons, we work with the computation neurons, we work with the master cell that's in the body, we work with the nervous system, we work with the fascia, you know, that's the communicator board in the body. There's so much that we play with, but because the only reason why we avoid it as well is because we don't understand it. And if we don't understand something, our natural instinctive response is to fear it and to avoid it. But what if I can take that fear and that avoidance away from you and say, hey, come on, this is how easy it can be. Here's all the answers. Here's the way forward. You don't even need to be intuitive. You will be when you come to the technique, because we're going to blast open your intuition. But Metaphysical Anatomy Volume 1, the book, takes away your excuse of I can't see, I can't hear. The answers are all there, right?
It's just that when I'm listening to you, it just makes me feel, wow, I'm talking to a person who knows the anatomy of a body, and it has taken it to another level, and now it can play with it.
Exactly, and now you can also play with it. Right? You don't need to be an expert in anything. You don't need any prior qualifications. You don't. You just come to the course and learn how the body works, which is actually very simple. My best practitioners are, for example, 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids, right? Because they've never done any other modality, so they were so open to receive the simplicity of Metaphysical Anatomy Technique. They weren't sitting there trying to compare it, you know, to other modalities and thinking, oh, but this is how I used to do it. I'm too scared to move out of my comfort zone. I want to try doing that, you know, and then they sabotage. It can actually be easy if you just surrender and allow yourself to be a student again.
Well, do you think that since you've talked about younger ages, and do you think that the everyday life that we as adults have is a way of avoiding all of this simplicity that we can have, and get away of all of the traumas?
Absolutely, because
do you think?
Yeah, but here's the thing: we're programmed. We are programmed that everything has to be hard. Success is hard. Money is hard. Healing is hard. Everything is hard. So it's almost like if it's too easy, it's like, oh my God, no, it's going to come back. No, it's too easy. You know, everyone else is suffering and now I'm having it, I'm finding it the easy way. Oh my God, I'm going to get punished, or, you know, I have to suffer with the collective consciousness. You don't. Suffering is a choice. Just as much as entrapment, feeling trapped is a choice. And I want to explain that. I once spoke to a prisoner. He was on death row. He was going to be executed either way. He was going to go. And he was sitting in a cell. He had a cell that had no windows, nothing. He couldn't see the outside. The cell was just big enough to fit his bed in there and a toilet, and that was it. And my first reaction was, because I'm thinking, oh my God, I would have constant panic attacks from feeling trapped, right? You'd feel trapped. And he said to me, Evette, entrapment is a state of mind. Freedom is also a state of mind. Which one do you choose? Yes, I'm sitting in a cell where I can't move, I can't see anything, but I feel free. Because freedom is a state of mind. And that is one thing that someone can't take away from me, is my state of mind. I was blown away by that answer, because there's so much truth, so much depth in that I realized, wow, my state of mind is the way that it is. Because I gave my power away to my external environment, you know, needing approval, you know, trauma that happened to me that changed and shaped the way that I felt and saw things and experienced things. But I became passive in my life. And it was time for me to become proactive, right? And that's where the magic lies. It's becoming proactive. Stop waiting for things to just magically change, because they're not. They're not.
This is such a great truth you're telling. Yeah, we need to get to action, and according to metaphysical anatomy technique, when something seems to stopping us, just we have to look at the body and release it and say goodbye to it.
Exactly,
this
because
now.
Because the thing with trauma is we start to identify with it so much that it becomes part of our identity, right? Being abused becomes an identity. Being a victim becomes an identity. But it's not your identity. You're far greater and more amazing and powerful than that. That is just an experience that we've now labeled with an identity. Because we don't know who we are if we're not being abused. We don't know who we are if we're not being a victim. Who are you when you step outside of that limitation? Who are you? That is what scares people. That is what scares people, and that's why they stay in these disempowered states and make it their identity, not consciously, unconsciously, but it becomes an accepted false identity.
I agree. Well, I want to ask you something more about the metaphysical anatomy technique, in order to be easier to grasp for every person who is going to read about it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about what are the pillars of metaphysical anatomy technique, where it is based as a technique.
Meaning the structure of it, or?
Yeah, the structure and 2 or 3 key points where it is based.
So, in metaphysical anatomy, we work with the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, and also the long-term emotional memory, because emotions is what's most important to work with, and also our survival instinctive responses, which means, you know, it's that, and that's the reason why you're here with me right now, watching me, you're observing me, you're alive, because of your instinctive responses. So instincts come first, they react first. It's very subtle, very unconscious, but they react first, and then we have emotions. So these two are always triggered constantly throughout our day and life together. So that's why it's incredibly important to always look at instinctive responses and to look at emotional responses. And then also looking at how did we start to cope and manage around these emotional responses if the body didn't have an opportunity to heal the trauma cycle? So in metaphysical anatomy, we have, you know, a 60-second very short process where we find hidden blocks, hidden benefits, secondary gains, to get out of our own way so that we can get into the emotional responses and instinctive responses, complete the cycles very gently, almost unconsciously, complete it, so that the body can reset itself and go back to its beautiful natural blueprint, almost as if though the trauma didn't happen, but the memory of it, the discernment of it remains. So that in a nutshell is what I would say metaphysical anatomy, the pillars are, and also understanding, you know, the ancestral predispositions that's in the biological body and how it's expressed and how to easily recognize it and heal it.
Ah, great. It was exactly what I wanted about this question.
Right?
Yeah, great. Well, with my questions, I've realized, as we've talked before, that metaphysical anatomy is a technique based on the body as the means for a person to release their trauma and their limiting us. And what two or three key points again of what do you spot as different and more effective in this technique?
So
in this procedure.
Can you repeat that last sentence?
What do you see as different and more effective in this procedure of being in the body and working with the body to do our healing process?
Got it. So firstly, when you come to the live event, you're going to laugh how easy it is to communicate and talk to the body, number one. Also, you don't have to relive your pain. You don't have to think back or talk about, you know, bad things that happened. The emotion that you feel is enough. Because that's what puts people off from healing work. Because, you know, if you went through a severe trauma such as rape, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to think back to it. You don't want to relive that. Right? That's almost like abusing yourself all over again, and that's not necessary. So it's about tapping into the emotion and releasing that. It's about connecting and feeling it in the body, releasing the trauma that's there, because ultimately it's showing you that it is safe to connect to the body. It's safe to go into the body, because that's where we need to create the changes. Because now in society, we are relying on our environment, friends, people, partners, to make us happy, to make us feel safe. But here's the problem. Friends, partners, and your environment can change like that. And what happens? Your safety nets outside of you changes. And that means your happiness is going to change in the blink of an eye. Your sense of safety and stability is going to change in the blink of an eye. And then you're going to scatter around, feel traumatized again, trying to look for other people and circumstances outside of you to replace this void that you're feeling within. But now what if you can go within gently, fulfill and heal that void so that you have that sense of security and safety and love and connectedness within you, so that people in your environment and your environment itself is complementary to your natural state of happiness that you've recovered, because now you feel it within you. Because remember, even though if you're depressed and you're thinking, oh my God, I will never be happy, you know, I can't feel love, I can't feel this, that's not true. That's nonsense. You have a predisposition for every single beautiful positive emotion that you can possibly think of, because you are an expression of your ancestors. There is someone in your ancestral DNA lineage that experienced deep love, that experienced, you know, true safety and security and whatever it is that you want to experience. You know, there's a part of you that knows what it feels like to be a billionaire, because that predisposition is within you. Now it's a matter of tapping into that, rediscovering it, and letting it blossom.
Well, the last one you said, it was really optimistic, because, you know, we tend to see the ancestor as the bad guys.
They're not. No.
All the drama and make our lives difficult. And it's another point of view which is really really optimistic and great, because you say that we have the knowledge, it's in our DNA, and it is our choice if we are going to learn the knowledge of the trauma, or learn of the happiness.
Exactly.
And it was really nice that last thing. It made me feel really optimistic, for some reason.
But it should. I'm really happy to hear you say that it should, because now we go into the past and we're just looking for pain, we're just looking for trauma. So of course that's all that we're going to see in the ancestry. But we need to shift our focus, our reticular activating system, and then to realize, but hey, come on, there's all these beautiful positive aspects that you can tap into. And when you start seeing it and thinking it and feeling it and knowing that you can tap into that, of course you're going to start seeing more of it. The body's going to start to recognize it. The body doesn't recognize it because you're not focusing on it. Shift your focus, shift your awareness, how you're filtering in information in and out. That's what the RAS does. Okay, because if you focus on pain and that's what you're looking for, that's exactly what you're going to find.
But if you focus on knowledge, that's exactly what you're going to find.
Of course. Because you become a frequency match for that.
You gave me another point of view today, so thank you about that.
Of course, I'm happy to help.
So, another question, it's what a person that experiences a procedure of metaphysical anatomy technique, what they are going to feel afterwards. What happens afterwards?
So when you are at the end of an MAT healing session, normally what the person should feel is a state of neutralness. You're not happy, you're not sad, you feel neutral. I call it almost like the meh state. You feel like meh, like everything is just normal, everything's fine, right? And the reason why that's important is that when you feel happy and you're like, oh my God, this is so great, that's called positive trauma, which means your session is incomplete. And of course, if you're sad, we know that you're complete, because our natural state is gentleness, it's neutralness, it's just being in the flow, it's humbleness, it's gracefulness. It's not like, oh my God, this is so great, and oh my God, it's so sad. It's not any of these two. Of course we think that positive trauma, I call it positive trauma, because when you meet people and they're like this all the time, and it's like, oh my God, life is so great, we're gonna party, we're gonna have fun. That's just a way of coping with unresolved trauma and stress, and we're trying to express it in a positive way because it feels better. And then we become addictive because we feel a positive outlet for this trauma. But then also what happens is we create a personality, an identity that's not authentic, right? Because that happiness is an expression of unresolved pain. So at the end of a session, it's important that the person is neutral. And what I normally say to people is that it's going to take them 7 days to fully integrate the session, because we have to remember the neurogenesis, the neural pathway, the synapses. Either the neural pathway will reprogram itself, or it can actually die and a new neural pathway is developed. Whichever way your body chooses to move forward with that, we have to allow the biological body to gently catch up. I don't interfere with that process because we're not brain engineers, right? We let the body and the limbic system readjust to the changes. So the emotional charge to trauma is gone. So now the body and the mind gently starts to readjust to the change. And so on day 7, that's when I tell people, okay, now we're looking at what's really going on. How do you feel when you think back to that old problem, right? Because that's full integration.
Yeah, and I guess the preferable outcome is once more to look back and feel neutral.
Exactly, that is what you want. You want to be in that state of neutralness, because when you're in that state of neutralness, that is when you feel your natural states of mind. That's when you can feel the state of that gentle flowing happiness. That is when you can feel that state of freedom, when you can feel that state of gratitude, because there's no distractions. And these beautiful states can just, like beautiful waves, they can just flow in, flow out, flow in, flow out.
Or as we can say, the state of Zen, in which I get teased a lot at work, because sometimes I am just like that, as you're saying, and everyone to me is like, "Oh my God, where is your enthusiasm? Why are you so Zen?"
Yeah, but you see, people say enthusiasm. It's like, oh my God, but I feel enthusiastic, but I feel it in a Zen way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, metaphysical anatomy technique it was the technique that made me click in that. It is just that it's not always good to feel fine and enthusiastic, and maybe there's something there too.
Right.
We tend to look at the feelings that we don't want to feel, such as anger and sadness, and we forget that even the other side, maybe it's hitting something, and it's something I realized on the level 1.
Yeah.
So, why would you recommend to a healer, a person who is doing it for a living, to use metaphysical anatomy technique as a technique in a client?
Right. So my first answer to that would be is that let's stop doing 6 sessions working on one issue, and let's do one issue. Let's work one session on one issue, because metaphysical anatomy is really very powerful. That you can compress instead of so many sessions into one. Especially if you're working on a big trauma. A lot of people, would do 2, 3, 4 sessions. And when I ask people, like when I was still experimenting back in the past, and I ask, I have this trauma, how many sessions do you think I need? And the person would say 3 or 4. And I'm like, wow. And it's discouraging. It's discouraging. Why should we extend the pain if we have this cutting edge research that's right here for you? Why would you want to create more pain? I understand that we have that healing work is a business. We also have bills to pay, we also have an income, but it's also a part of us that's authentic, and we want to help people. But I also believe that it's important that what we give our clients is the best of the best, because that is your job as a practitioner, of course.
Yes, I totally agree to that.
It's like when you go to a doctor, you don't want the doctor to give you, an answer that's based on 10 years research 10 years ago, and there's research that's been done a week ago. That's your doctor's job to make sure that they give you the best and most up-to-date technology and answers. So that's how I see it.
So you say that if you want to use an up-to-date technique, a state-of-the-art technique, you can use metaphysical anatomy technique.
Pretty much, yes.
I like that.
Yes. I mean, and I'm not saying that other techniques are not good. I mean, of course, every technique has their audience, because we gravitate to a technique because that's what we feel ready for. And if you feel ready to get going with your life, and if you feel stuck and things just don't work for you, then give metaphysical anatomy a chance.
Yeah, I know that you mean that. As much as tools you have as a healer, it's the best, because you have so many different situations, and then intuitively you can say that, this one is the best one to use metaphysical anatomy technique, or maybe some other technique. And so let me after that I came up with another question. In which situations will you recommend to a healer to use metaphysical anatomy technique? Because we said before that, the healer can use lots of different techniques.
Yes. So, metaphysical anatomy is designed to give you a lot of tools for your healing toolbox. So there's a standard structured foundation of metaphysical anatomy that will always be part of your session process. But then I also teach you other fun ways to connect and to feel and to sense what's happening and how to facilitate the session even more successfully. And because we all have different gifts, we all have different ways of how we tap into the body and how we connect and intuitively, for you to find which tool works best for you. So I designed metaphysical anatomy to be fail-proof for you, you know, because we're not always going to have a day where we're super psychic. We're not always going to have a good day or where we feel very intuitive. And if that happens, that's okay. Metaphysical anatomy is designed to still help you to work around that and to still have a very effective healing session. So there's a lot of fun tools there that you'll be learning. And metaphysical anatomy is for emotions, it's for physical pain, it's for psychological pain, it's phobias, fears, depression, right? All these symptoms that we have ultimately comes back to emotions. Whether those emotions are from your life or from ancestral triggers, at least that is a very clear path to follow and an easy path to follow.
Yeah. And what about the everyday people? They want not healers. They just read the article. They just read the interview. What would you say to them in order to try metaphysical anatomy technique in their everyday lives?
So what I would say is that it regardless whether you're a practitioner or just a person that just wants to be happy again, it's important that we all, every single person on this planet, takes the power back in our own lives. Now I understand that there's circumstances where, you know, where you feel disempowered, where you may be controlled by an authority figure or a president that's messed up or something that feels like is disempowering you. But what you can control and change is how you feel, right? So now the power lies exactly within that. It's about being in control of your state of mind. It's about being in control of your emotions. And it's about being in control of your ability to make decisions. What you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. What do you want to deal with and what do you want to heal? Right? That's where we've become victims. That's where we have become passive. So now what if I tell you, what if there's this grand opportunity for you now to turn that around? And just to get back, instead of sitting on the passenger side of the